Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Paul sent me a note about something that happened just across the river from Detroit. Detroit is in the southeast corner of Michigan. The Detroit River flows nearby, and across the river is Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And it's a really, really neat place. And when I was a kid, you didn't even need to have much of anything to cross the bridge. Nowadays, they want ID and possibly a passport, that kind of thing. But in the old days, they'd stop you and go, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Fine, have a nice day. And so we'd spend a lot of time in Windsor. So I know a lot about Windsor, and I was actually in Detroit yesterday at the Autorama. And I was driving around. At one point, I looked across the river, and there, of course, is Windsor. Beautiful town. So Paul sent me a note and said, Steve, did you catch a story out of Windsor? Now, not a lot of this has hit the news yet, but I suspect it might. So the first part of the story, and by the way, Paul sent me two things, and I'll get to the second thing afterwards. The first thing is from windsortoday.ca. Miller Hill wrote this. Windsor Deputy Police Chief facing stunt driving charge. And I've talked in the past about stunt driving, and that's doing all kinds of crazy stuff with your car, sometimes simply driving excessively fast. And in some states and in some places in Canada, they've got very, very severe penalties if you get caught doing this. Ontario recently made it very, very serious if you get caught stunt driving. So what happens when the deputy police chief of Windsor is facing a stunt driving charge? So Windsor's deputy police chief is facing a stunt driving charge after allegedly driving more than 110 kilometers per hour in a posted 70K zone earlier this year while off duty in Amherstburg. According to a statement from police, on January 7th, WPS Deputy Chief of Operations was off duty in his personal vehicle when he was pulled over for allegedly driving 40 kilometers over the speed limit in Amherstburg, 40 kilometers per hour. A Windsor police officer who was in the area conducting traffic enforcement said he observed the vehicle traveling at a high rate of speed. Now, the officer was released with no further action and subsequently disclosed the incident to the chief of police. Now, the question, of course, is why was he released with no further action? Because if you or I got caught driving 40 kilometers per hour over the speed limit, we might actually get a ticket for that. So the chief then directed the WPS Professional Standards Branch to investigate the matter, according to a statement. As a result of the investigation, the officer was issued a summons to appear in court in relation to a stunt driving charge. So he was eventually ticketed, but he was not at first. And so that right there might raise some eyebrows. But if he gets treated going forward as anybody else would get treated, then we would have no problem with this, right? Of course, you wonder why it got reported so late. Police will not be releasing any further information as the matter is now before the courts. So Paul, who sent me the first story, did the research for me and said, just in case you need my help on this, thank you. I'm attaching the story that talks about the increased fines and penalties for stunt driving in Ontario. So this is from CTV News back in April. Ontario adds another penalty for people caught stunt driving. These are the new rules by Sean Davidson. The Ontario government has added a new penalty for stunt driving beginning April 1st. According to the Ministry of Transportation, drivers convicted of stunt driving must now also complete a driver improvement course, or they'll have their license canceled. The course must be picked from a list of government-approved companies. The Ministry of Transportation told CTV News Toronto the course must be completed within 60 days of conviction. This requirement, along with the higher fines and longer suspensions, sends a clear message to drivers that high-risk and aggressive driving has no place on our roads. Anyone caught driving 40K or more above the speed limit, where the speed limit is set at less than 80K, will face stunt driving charges in Ontario. In areas where the speed limit is above 80K, a motorist will face stunt driving charges if they go more than 50 kilometers per hour above the limit. Drivers also face a 30-day roadside driver's license suspension as well as a 14-day vehicle impoundment if pulled over by the police for stunt driving. So this man's vehicle should have been impounded, and it looks like he should have had a roadside driver's license suspension. But since they let him drive away in his own vehicle, it looks like that didn't happen. Gee, I wonder why. The maximum fine for stunt driving in Ontario is $10,000. $10,000. And you could also face up to 6 months in prison. Now, I know some of you are saying, Steve, we all love our Canadian friends and relatives and robot ladies, but $10,000 and 6 months in prison? Well, I got news for you. In many states, reckless driving will get you 6 months in jail. You won't be in prison, but it'll be 6 months locked up. According to the police, speed-related deaths in Ontario reached a 10-year high with 81 fatalities in 2021. A total of 315 people died on the road that year, marking a 3% increase from 2020. The fatalities occurred as a result of 288 separate crashes. OPP said they logged 19 more speed-related deaths than the previous year. So the point of all of this is that the man was caught driving at a speed which would qualify as stunt driving. The officer who pulled him over let him go. Now, the guy did report himself. We don't know why, but he did report himself. It got turned over to investigators who then decided, yes, he should be charged. That means he's already gotten special treatment because according to law, there was supposed to be ramifications at the roadside. So theoretically, if the guy is going to court on these charges, yeah, he's actually facing very serious stuff. The question is what's going to happen to him. And I got to tell you, I've been pulled over a couple times in my life. I did a video not so long ago. I got pulled over late last year, I believe it was, by a police officer who claimed that he thought I hit the fog line or something. And he let me go after about a 60-second stop. But I've also gotten the lecture. I've gotten the lecture. And when I was younger, I remember getting pulled over. Police officer walking up to the car. Do you know how fast you were going? May I ask where you are going? Why are you driving so fast? Do you realize how many... And you get that lecture, which is very similar to the movie they made you watch in the old school driver's ed, Death on the Highway. You start getting that lecture. You understand, people get killed. Doesn't matter if you're drunk or not. Sober, doesn't matter. The speed you're going, you're going to kill somebody. Do you think the deputy police chief got that lecture? Wouldn't you love to be the officer who pulled him over? Pretend you don't know who he is? Oh, are we in a hurry tonight? You know how fast you're going? You know what the speed limit is? Do you know when people die in Ontario due to the way you're driving? I wonder if he got that lecture. Or if the guy walks and goes, oh, I know you. Skedaddle. I mean, I don't know. But I'm a firm believer. People in positions of power who break laws that they are assigned to enforce, if guilty of what they're accused, should be punished more harshly. So when a judge is looking at sentencing somebody, and they've got all these different factors to look at, one of the factors they should look at is, how does this look? What did they do to their own reputation? What did they do to the reputation of the department they work for? Because you and I both know that when the police chief heard what his deputy had been caught doing, he wanted to pull his hair out. I guarantee you, he's like, okay, this is going to seriously hurt our public image. And right about now, the police really can't use a lot of stuff that hurts their image publicly. They probably don't want that. Now, in Ontario, maybe the situation is different. And I've been to Canada many, many times. And the Free Press Marathon, which I run on occasion, has a portion running through Canada, over the bridge, around Windsor a little bit, and then back through the tunnel. So I've been to Canada many, many times, often on foot. But yeah, so we don't know what will happen to him. I hope they follow up on it in the news. But as of right now, a Windsor deputy police chief is facing a stunt driving charge. That's from windsortoday.ca. Miller Hill wrote it, and Paul sent it. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Everyone wants to live on top of the mountain. but all the happiness and growth occurs while you're climbing it.